What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name's CJ. This is Out of Bounds DFS, and in today's video, we get back to what we're good at, and that's NBA over on PrizePicks. We're going to take a first look at the PrizePicks board, try to figure out who are some good overplays, some of the good underplays for fantasy point projection over on the PrizePicks slate today. So if this is your first time to the channel, welcome to Out of Bounds DFS. This is a channel all about single player daily fantasy sports. So right now our focus is PrizePicks and NBA, but every once in a while I mix it up. Yesterday I did a college basketball video. A few days ago I did an NHL single stat video. So we're trying to keep things fresh and keep things growing here. I am proud to say that we hit our goal, which was 700 subscribers by the end of March. So now we have to set new goals. Maybe we can get to 725, let's just say, by the end of March. We got, about a couple weeks to go here. I think it's attainable. What about you? Anyway, if you are watching this video, make sure that you're subscribed. Some of you are not. There's still about 49% of you who watch these videos on a daily basis that haven't subscribed yet. So definitely make sure you are. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any of the content that I drop on a daily basis. Now, without further ado, we've got 10 games to talk about on tonight's NBA slate. So a very big slate, lots of names, lots of teams to discuss. So we'll start things off like we typically do by discussing injury news. And for the Houston Rockets, John Wall is questionable to play with a left knee contusion. Stephen Curry is going to be doubtful with a bruised tailbone. Kevin Durant for the Brooklyn Nets is out tonight versus my Orlando Magic. Thank you. Not that we have a chance anyway, but he's out, so maybe our chances go up ever so slightly. DeMar DeRozan's going to be out due to personal reasons. Kelly Oubre, Golden State Warriors, doubtful with a foot injury. OG Anunoby, he is probable to play for the Raptors, so the Raptors are slowly starting to get their team back. Everybody's starting to return healthy now. So Marvin Bagley, Sacramento Kings, he's going to be out tonight with a hand injury. He's out indefinitely. Tristan Thompson for the Celtics is out due to COVID protocol. Michael Carter-Williams, Orlando Magic, he was a guy who everybody was liking. I think it was single stat assist. Well, he ended up being ruled out, which threw a monkey wrench in a bunch of people's plans. He is questionable to play tonight for the Magic with an illness. James Wiseman, center for the Golden State Warriors, is out due to COVID protocol. Dorian Finney-Smith, Dallas Mavericks, out for personal reasons. Kevin Love, Cleveland Cavaliers, he is out with a calf injury. Wayne Ellington, Detroit Pistons, out with an adductor. And finally, Malik Beasley, Minnesota Timberwolves, he is out due to a suspension he is serving. So there you have it in terms of all the big injury news. That could impact some things. There's some pretty big names on there, so definitely keep that in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is that the projections in today's video are likely to change as we start locking in some of our favorite picks. PrizePicks, they adjust, and they will tweak or tune their projections. And, it's a game of cat and mouse. It's ongoing, never ending. So let's start getting into some of these projections here. The first game on the board is kind of an exciting one, in my opinion. We've got the Sacramento Kings taking on the Boston Celtics. So for Sacramento, we got the likes of De'Aaron Fox, Richaun Holmes, Buddy Hield, and then for Boston, we've got Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Kemba Walker. This game is set to tip off right around 7:30 or 7:40 over on PrizePicks. So we will go over to Roto Grinders, which is our reference site of choice. I've already got the FanDuel projections preloaded in there. And again, the reason we use FanDuel's projections is because they score NBA DFS the same way that PrizePicks does. So it makes it easy for us to kind of reference for them. And, looking at the totals here, Boston 120, Sacramento 113. That's 233 combined points. I'm loving the game totals here. Normally when game totals are 230 or higher, that means there's going to be more opportunities for real life points, rebounds, assists, and fantasy projection or fantasy scores should be through the roof here, and a lot more upside. So we've been using this DVA or defense versus archetype. It's kind of like DVP, just to kind of identify some good matchups for some of the guys that are out there today. So the first one that's standing out to me is going to be Kemba Walker. He is projected at 34 over on PrizePicks. They've got him at 32.72 on Roto Grinders. Now, he is a combo guard, and the reason I like Kemba Walker is that Sacramento allows over 55 fantasy points per game to combo guards like Kemba. So let's look at his recent game logs and get an idea of how he's been performing going over, under on 34 fantasy points. And we take it back here to his 5th game against the Clippers. He goes over at 37.8, 27.4, 21.6, 30.7, and 29.9. So just one over to go along with 4 straight unders for Kemba Walker. Now looking back here at his previous game logs, I don't see a recent game versus this Sacramento squad, so we can move ahead here and look at the minutes. And he's expected to play about 32 of them tonight. This is 3 games in 4 nights for Kemba, but I do believe that he sat out a game recently. Yes, I forget what date it fell on, but it was after this 3/16 Stone Cold Steve Austin day. But anyway, he should be more well-rested than what this rest indication looks like. So he hasn't really played 3 games in 4 nights. He's probably played like 2 games in 4 nights. But minutes per game this season, 30.2, 1.03 fantasy points per minute, and his usage rating is at 27.31. So Kemba Walker is a guy who has the possibility, the potential to go over his projection of 34 tonight, just based on the matchup that we're seeing here. So let's continue down the line here and see who else jumps out. Well, another guy that stands out to me is going to be De'Aaron Fox. Now, De'Aaron Fox, he is at 44 on PrizePicks. They've got him at 41.48 on RotoGrinders. So RotoGrinders a little bit lower than PrizePicks, but what is standing out to me is the fact that this Boston Celtics team can't seem to defend combo guards like De'Aaron Fox very well. In fact, they've allowed almost 50 fantasy points per game to combo guards. De'Aaron Fox, one of the better young combo guards in the league. So yes, there is definitely some upside here for De'Aaron Fox in this matchup. Now, if we look at his last 5, he's got some very high game totals. He's been playing very good basketball lately. So in his 5th game back against Portland, 61.6. That puts him well over 44 without question. Then he goes over again at 54.9, 49.4. Then he drops under, but just barely at 43.8, and then rises back up to 51.7. So this dude has been playing some great basketball lately in his last 5 games, going over 4 times, under just once. And how can you not love this matchup here with what we're seeing in terms of the amount of fantasy points allowed by this Celtics team? He's going to play big minutes. It is 2 games in 3 nights for De'Aaron Fox. 1.19 fantasy points per minute and a usage rating of 31.44. So he is the heart and soul. He is the little engine that could for the Sacramento Kings team. So I expect him to put up a very, very good game tonight. So I like a potential over there on De'Aaron Fox. Now, another dude that's jumping out is Jason Tatum. He's been struggling a little bit. Tonight, he's at 46 on PrizePicks, 43.92 if we round it up and call it 44 over on RotoGrinders. So let's take a look at Jason Tatum's recent game logs here and see what he's been up to. All right, so you could see in his last 5 here, 48.3, 42.5, 40.2, 46.7, and 47.5. So this 46 number, he has went over that in 3 out of 5 games. 3 out of 5, not a bad success rate. And when you factor in how many points are expected to be scored here, the spread, it's, yellow to orange range. It's not exactly a game that looks like it's going to stay close and competitive, but I think it stays close long enough for Jason Tatum to potentially get his. So somewhere between 44 and 46 points for Tatum tonight seems reasonable. All right, and we keep moving down the line here. Richaun Holmes, he's in a decent little matchup. No Tristan Thompson for the Boston Celtics tonight, so maybe that benefits Richaun Holmes. He's projected at 35 over on PrizePicks, at 33.74 on RotoGrinders. Post-up bigs against the Celtics this season allowed over 31 fantasy points per game, so maybe Richaun Holmes bounces back. I know there were some people in the Discord. By the way, if you're not a member of our Discord, it's free to join. I'll leave a link down in the description for you to join below. But Richaun Holmes owes some people some rebounds. I think there was a lot of people who took Richaun Holmes over on rebounds. And, Holmes, he owes us something. I think he owes us some points or some rebounds. So maybe Richaun Holmes gets it done tonight in a bounce-back game here against the Celtics. With all these points on the board, rebounds, assists, and stuff should be plentiful. But That's going to be it for that game. I will move on here and try to keep this video a little more short and sweet. So the next game on the board is the San Antonio Spurs versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. That game also tips off at 7:40 p.m. over on PrizePicks. So we've got the likes of DeJounte Murray, Jared Allen, Jacob Poeltl, even Keldon Johnson. We got 4 Spurs up on the board today. And, I'm sorry, Jared Allen's not a Spur. It just looks like it because he's wearing his Brooklyn Nets jersey. DeJounte Murray, Jacob Poeltl, and Keldon Johnson. Then for Cleveland, we got Colin Sexton, Jared Allen, and Darius Garland. The same cast of characters here. So let's look at this game real quick. I will tell you right off the top here that this game does not expect to be very high scoring. The game totals here top just 210 points. So you're looking at 210.5 to be exact. The spread is competitive though. It's just a 4.5 point spread. So you expect that the guys that are the major players in this game should play a lot of minutes and get plenty of run here. But I'm not looking to take too many of the role player guys if I'm taking anybody from this game. Those guys are just not going to be highly sought after for me personally. But when we start looking at guys that stand out, well, Colin Sexton at 35 and Darius Garland at 30 both stand out to me because Darius Garland and Colin Sexton both fall into a combo guard classification according to RotoGrinders. Now, why I like this is the San Antonio Spurs are giving up over 55 fantasy points per game to combo guards. So Garland or Sexton, one or the other, will probably have a good game in this matchup. At least that's what I'm expecting. Now, they're both playing 3 games in 4 nights. Both average 33 or more minutes per game. Sexton getting more of that run at almost 36 minutes per game. And then fantasy points per minute, Sexton 0.95, Garland 0.85. Usage rating for Sexton, 27.82. He's the higher of the two, and the usage for Garland at 24.27. So based on their projections, you got Colin Sexton at 35 on PrizePicks. He's at 37.94 on RotoGrinders. He would be a potential candidate to go over. I know a lot of people have been clicking the under because Sexton hasn't been playing very well lately, but in this spot, in this matchup, this could be one where he bounces back. So keep an eye on that. Darius Garland, he's projected at 30. They actually like him to go under that projection over on PrizePicks. So there you have it. Sexton potentially goes over. Garland, maybe he goes under. But either way, both guys in very good matchups. Moving on down the line here, another guy that stands out is going to be DeJounte Murray. Now, DeJounte Murray is at 38 fantasy points. No DeMar DeRozan, as we mentioned at the top of the show. He continues to be out for San Antonio due to personal reasons. So in his place, DeJounte Murray usually plays pretty good basketball. They got him at 37.95 on RotoGrinders, so comparatively, he's right around that 38-point range, which seems to be appropriate for him. Now, why I like him is the fact that this Cleveland Cavaliers team, they allow almost 52 fantasy points per game to a guy like DeJounte Murray, 2 combo guards. So this is a good spot for Murray to potentially go over here. And I could see this turning into a very guard-heavy game. Sexton, Garland, Murray, Keldon Johnson. I mean, it could turn into a track meet, a run-and-gun style game, and maybe they go over that implied point total tonight. But if you look at the last 5 games here, DeJounte Murray, it's been spotty. It's been hit or miss, up and down, however you want to describe it. 24.5 puts him well under 38. 37.2, close but no cigar. That's another under. 23.2 puts him under 39. He finally gets over 38 there. And then 25.4 in his last one puts him under. So he has put up some great games in the past, but recently things have been a little bit more difficult for DeJounte Murray and 38 fantasy points. So just be careful with him. I do like this spot for him. If I'm leaning one way or the other, it's probably going to be on the over for DeJounte Murray. All right, enough about him. Let's see who else we could potentially target tonight. We got Jacob Poeltl at 32 fantasy points. He is at 29, we'll call it, 28.99 fantasy points. So they like him to go under. Post-up bigs against this Cleveland Cavaliers squad have been allowed about 28.27 fantasy points per game. So they're allowing just a little under what Jacob Poeltl is projected to score today at 32. So tough matchup potentially against a long athletic guy like Jared Allen. maybe he gives Jacob Podol some problems. So potentially going under on Podol makes some sense there. I do think this is going to be more of a guard focused game, but I think that's going to be it for this one. Not going to go in the weeds too much on any more of these guys here, but there you have it. Pretty low scoring game according to Vegas, although it should stay close and competitive. So with that one in the books, we can move on to the next one, which should be a much more exciting game in terms of fantasy potential, fantasy upside. We've got the Utah Jazz versus the Toronto Raptors. I mentioned the Raptors finally looking healthy, finally looking like they're going to have a full complement of players. For Utah, we got Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell. Mike Conley is back after being rested, I believe, the last game. For the Toronto Raptors side, we got Kyle Lowry, of course, a mainstay for the Toronto Raptors. We got Fred VanVleet back and Pascal Siakam back. Now, these projections for both Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet seem low, but they're still working themselves back into game shape, I'm sure. Maybe there's a little bit of a minutes limit or minutes restriction on these guys, but these numbers are sure to rise. So if we can keep an eye on them over the next couple of games, we might be able to jump on some overs as these guys work themselves back into full condition, full game shape. So something to be mindful of. Now, looking at this game here, we got Utah at 117.75, Toronto at 112.75. Tons of points expected to be scored in this game, going over 230 implied points. Spread, pretty competitive. I'd probably put it in the yellow, not the green. Looks like a 5-point spread. So things should stay fairly close, fairly competitive. Both teams have a full roster here. So I expect everybody to be playing big minutes, who is usually a major player for each squad. So now in terms of DVA, there's not a lot of spots here that are really standing out to me that look potentially good here. You could see that one guy who is in a potential upside or plus situation in terms of matchup is Donovan Mitchell. Mitchell popped off last night, had a fantastic game. I think he finished with over 57 fantasy points. So if you took Donovan Mitchell over in a full game format, it worked out for you. If you took Donovan Mitchell over in a first half only format, well, he was pretty much held in check in the first half. He went like for 12 points or something ridiculous. So he had a monster second half. Hopefully tonight things work out a little different for Donovan Mitchell, but he is projected at 40 on PrizePicks, 41.47 over on RotoGrinders. So RotoGrinders liking the over on Donovan Mitchell. Maybe it makes another good overplay tonight. The reason I say that I like Mitchell here is the fact that the Raptors allow over 46 fantasy points per game to combo guards like Mitchell. So this is an upside type of game here for Donovan Mitchell. We're going to look at his last 5 game logs and see what he's been up to here. So over his last 5, guys, he went under against, we can't count that one. That was against Team LeBron. That was the All-Star game. So we'll go back one further here. Philadelphia, 51.6. That puts him well over 40. All right, we skip over the All-Star game. His first game back after the All-Star break, he drops 50 fantasy points. That puts him well over 40. Then he drops down to just 26, 31.9, 2 big-time unders. But last night I mentioned against Washington, 57.8. So if you guys ever need a boost, if you're ever looking for a plus matchup, just play guys against Washington. Anytime you start a guard against Washington, you might as well just click the over, because Washington is like a stimulus package when it comes to fantasy production and fantasy points. So tonight he takes on the Raptors. He's expected to play 36 minutes. I already mentioned the matchups looking good. This is a back-to-back for him, 3 games in 4 nights. Maybe fatigue plays a little bit of a factor. He's a young buck, though. He should be fine. He's playing over 34 minutes a night, 1.15 fantasy points per minute, and a usage rating of over 32. Elite usage rating for Donovan Mitchell. So if I'm leaning one way or the other, it's probably going to be on the over for Donovan Mitchell in a high-scoring game that looks to be competitive. All right, moving on down the line here. Is there anybody else that's standing out? Well, yeah, we could talk Fred VanVleet for a minute. I mentioned Fred VanVleet is still working his way back, probably into game shape and stuff. They got him at 36 on PrizePicks. He is at 35.67 on RotoGrinders, meaning 35 to 36 in that range seems reasonable for Fred VanVleet. But this is a little bit of a plus matchup, despite what this ranking of 30 would suggest. This ranking of 30 means that the Utah Jazz are the toughest team against combo guards in the league. But despite their toughness against combo guards, they're still allowing almost 40 fantasy points per game. And that's higher than Fred VanVleet's projection of 36 on PrizePicks. So bit of an upside situation here for VanVleet. Let's see what he's been up to since returning to the lineup. All right, so his last game, 27.2. You could see he had a layoff of 5 straight games. Prior to that, he was playing very good basketball, though. 48.5, 50.6, 38.3, and 42.8. So absolutely balling. Now, his minutes were up around 36 to 38 minutes in those games. His first game back after that long layoff, 32 minutes. So he did not shoot the ball very well. Yes, he is a shot taker and shot maker, so he is very scoring dependent. So he's going to need to make and take more shots in order for him to hit the over on tonight's fantasy projection of 36. So just 27.2 in his last one. Not very good, but as I mentioned, prior to the injury, he was playing lights out basketball. So eventually he's going to return to form. I don't know if it's going to be tonight, but it could be based on how many points, the spread, and the matchup for Fred VanVleet. So I'm kind of leaning toward the over. Maybe you roll the dice on taking the over, or just don't touch this one at all. All right, Pascal Siakam, another guy who is in a interesting spot here, we'll say. He's projected for 34 over on PrizePicks. He is at 30.7 on RotoGrinders. So that would indicate we should definitely go under on him, but not so fast. Not so fast, because versatile forwards against Utah, they average 33.77 fantasy points per game, which is really close to tonight's projection of 34 for Siakam. And Siakam, I would say, is one of the better, younger, versatile forwards in the league. So let's see how he's been playing in recent days. So just like VanVleet, Siakam has missed a lot of games here, but his first game back, which was March 17th, 2 days ago, he played 30 minutes, did not shoot the ball very well. Kind of a trend here. These guys who have been out for a while, knocking off some rust, maybe their shot and legs and stuff just aren't falling yet. Maybe their legs just aren't underneath them. But anyway, he only put up 24.5 fantasy points. Now going back here, looking at his previous 4 games before the long layoff, 39.8 obviously puts him over, 44.4 over, 50.7 over, and then he plays just 24 minutes against Miami with 10 points there. So he had been playing some pretty good basketball up until that long layoff. So again, just like VanVleet, eventually this projection will start to creep up over the next couple of games. He will return to form. When do we jump in and take the over on Siakam and VanVleet? I don't know. Is it tonight? I don't know. It might be a little too soon to take the over on any of these guys, but that's just something to keep in mind there. All right. Anybody from the Utah side that we think we should talk about? Mike Conley, he is at 31 on PrizePicks. They got him at 31.56, but this matchup against this Toronto Raptors team not looking like a very strong one or a plus situation for Conley. So this could be a tough spot for him to get his, we'll say. So I would be a little cautious here with Mike Conley and taking the over there. So that might be a play to take under on. Anyway, this game, tons of points, very good competitive spread. Let's move on to the next one. We've got the Indiana Pacers taking on the Miami Heat, two of the better teams in the Eastern Conference. For Indiana, we got Sabonis, Brogdon, Turner. For Miami, we've got Butler, Adebayo, and Tyler Herro. So this game tips off at 8:10 p.m. over on PrizePicks. Let's find it here on RotoGrinders and start looking at some numbers. Okay. Excuse me. It is allergy season here in Florida. Miami, 109.75. Indiana, 105.75. So you're talking about a 4-point spread. Totals aren't super high here, so it looks like it's going to be one of those slower paced, defensive-minded, lower scoring type of games. So be careful with taking too many overs from this game. In this situation here, it looks like it's going to stay close and competitive, though. I think both teams are pretty evenly matched. So let's start things off with Tyler Herro, who's projected at 25 fantasy points. They got him at 24.5. If we round that up, then he falls right there on 25. This matchup, though, is a good one against not Utah. We're not talking Utah anymore. Against Indiana, they allow over 52 fantasy points per game to combo guards like Tyler Harrow. So let's take a look at Tyler's recent game logs and see what he has been doing. So if we could dial it all the way back to March 11th against Orlando, 31.3 puts him over the 25, 12.3 puts him well under, bounces back in a big way with 40 again against Orlando, 22.6 and 21. So in his last 5 games, guys, just 2 games where he's went over, 3 games where he's went under, and no recent games against Indiana for us to look at. So we can move ahead here and talk about minutes. He's going to be playing about 28 tonight. I've already mentioned the matchup being a good one for him. It is 3 games and 4 nights in terms of the rest situation for Tyler Harrow and the rest of the Miami Heat. For the season, he's playing about 32 minutes per game, 0.88 fantasy points per minute, and a usage rating of 22.67. So Harrow is in a spot where he's got tons of upside here in this matchup. So the over could definitely be in play. Now, another guy we got to talk about is Malcolm Brogdon, who's projected at 37 on PrizePicks. He's at 35.34 over on RotoGrinders. Now, looking at this, you would want to take the under just off of first glance. But why I would caution you and tell you to not be so quick to take the under is the fact that combo guards against Miami have feasted to the tune of 50 fantasy points per game. And that is exactly what Malcolm Brogdon is classified as a combo guard. So looking at his last 5, he went under against Denver with just 19.2. Comes back against the Lakers in a big way, 44.4, puts him over. 37, that would be a push. You don't see that very often, but he lands right on tonight's projection of 37 in that one against Phoenix. Denver again here, 36.2, so he goes under 37, and then 32 puts him under 37. So in his last 5, he's gone over just twice, under in 3. So the unders have been the way to go on Malcolm Brogdon. Now for the season, he is putting up 1.07 fantasy points per game, or per minute, I should say. 26.47 is his usage rating. So Malcolm Brogdon, another guy who could be in a good spot here to go over, but the only issue is I wish there was more points. And, with there being so few points, I'm a little hesitant to take the over on Brogdon in this situation. All right. Who else is worth talking about? I think Bam Adebayo could be in a tough spot tonight. He's facing probably Miles Turner for the most part. Adebayo's at 40. He is at 40.66 on RotoGrinders. Let's see how he's been doing since his long layoff and his return to the lineup. So you can see, guys, that in his last 2, 37.8 and 38.4. He has went under 40 in back-to-back games. Not to mention this matchup isn't the most friendly, as Indiana allows just 26.5, so 26.5 fantasy points per game to versatile bigs like Adebayo. So I'd be a little cautious at taking the over on Adebayo, especially given the game totals, the situation here for him, 3 games and 4 nights. Just not really feeling it. I think this is a good spot to maybe take an under on Bam. Otherwise, Sabonis, he is in a spot here at 44 on PrizePicks, 42.69 over on RotoGrinders. Tough matchup for him, 24.61 fantasy points per game allowed to versatile bigs by this Miami Heat front court. So this would be another spot where potentially going under on Sabonis might be the way to go. Let's see how 44 has treated Sabonis recently. Excuse me. So in his last 5 games, you could see that he's went over here, and that was against Denver at 46. 48.8 goes over. 62.6 goes over. 33.8 against Denver goes under, and then 58.7 going over. So, man, he's been playing lights out basketball. So if you don't want to take the under on Domantas Sabonis at 44, I can totally see why you wouldn't. But again, tough matchup, low scoring game. I just don't see a ton of upside here. It's going to be close. I think this will be a close one. But that's going to be it for this game. Let's move on to the next one. We've got the return of Christian Wood for the Houston Rockets. So exciting times if you're a Houston Rockets fan. Some much needed help. Christian Wood is back in the lineup. So he is facing off against the Detroit Pistons. In case you didn't know, that is Wood's former team. So maybe some extra motivation for Christian Wood tonight. Is he all the way back? I don't know yet. I know he was on a little bit of a minutes limit in his last game. So we'll see what he can do tonight here. This game does project to be a pretty low scoring one. Houston 108.25, Detroit 106.75. Although it's low scoring, I will say that the spread is green light go in terms of it staying close and competitive. So all the major names, guys like Christian Wood, Victor Oladipo, Kevin Porter Jr. now for Houston. And then on the flip side, Jeremy Grant, Mason Plumlee, and DeLon Wright. I think those guys will get plenty of minutes and should be in for pretty good games here. So starting things off, DeLon Wright is one guy that jumps off the board to me. He's at 34 on PrizePicks, 34.91 on Roto Grinders. Now, I like the over for DeLon Wright, and the reason is this Houston Rockets team sucks. They're just really bad, especially against combo guards like DeLon Wright. They allow almost 59 fantasy points per game, making them the #1 most giving, most generous team in the NBA to combo guards. So loving the matchup for DeLon Wright. Now let's take a look and see how he's been performing. Of course, he had that long layoff, but we'll just look at his last 4 games for this one. You can see that in his first game back, he only played 21, almost 22 minutes, just 13.6 fantasy points in that one, so big time under. Now, things start to look up for him. He plays 31 minutes in the next game, 30 fantasy points, 31 minutes in the game after that, 35 fantasy points, and then finally his last game, his minutes were way up against Toronto, 37 minutes, leading to 43 fantasy points. So guys, in his last 4 games, he's went over twice, under twice. But in his last 2, where his minutes are starting to elevate, starting to go up, he has went over in his last 2 games. So I'm liking the over here for DeLon Wright. Based on the way things are trending in his game logs, everything seems to be going in the right direction. And the fact that this matchup is a very, very good one here on paper for him. Liking the over on DeLon Wright in terms of fantasy points. All right, another guy in a good spot is Victor Oladipo. Now, he's been a hard guy to hit on. Tricky guy to figure out. Tonight's projections at 38. They got him at 36.29 over on Roto Grinder. So they like the under, slight under on Victor Oladipo. But there's another game here or another situation where the matchup is just too good to ignore, where combo guards against the Detroit Pistons have feasted almost 52 fantasy points per game. So major upside here for Victor Oladipo. There's a lot of different interchanging parts and components on this Houston Rockets team. We haven't seen Victor Oladipo, Kevin Porter Jr., Christian Wood all play at the same time, take the floor, and play major minutes together. This is a fairly new nucleus here in Houston, so it's hard to figure out how things are going to shake out with such a small sample size. But what we can do is look at Victor Oladipo and how he's been performing recently. And you can see in his last 5 games, mostly good in terms of going over 38. We go back here to March 1st against Cleveland. 34 puts him under, but then he comes back in a big way. 58.9, 40.3, 2 overs. Misses this game against Utah, jumps back with 37.2. Good, but not good enough for an over. That puts him under. And then 41 puts him over. So in his last 5, he's got 3 games of going over, 2 games of going under. I just have questions about how this chemistry is going to work out with Wood, Oladipo, Kevin Porter Jr. and company. So little bit skeptical here until I see what's going to happen. Oh, another guy that we should mention, John Wall. He's questionable to play. So if he does play, that's just another thing to worry about. It's just another piece of the puzzle that you have to try and figure out. Are these guys going to work well together? Who gets the majority of the usage? Who gets, the most fantasy points per minute when they're all on the floor playing together? Is Kevin Porter Jr. just an afterthought with John Wall in the lineup? I mean, there's only one basketball, and there's only so much usage that can go around here for each guy. So just some things that I'm thinking about when trying to process this situation for the Houston Rockets. Anyway, let's get back on track. Is there anybody else that we're looking at in terms of a good plus matchup? Anybody who could go over here? Jeremy Grant, he's at 37.26 on Roto Grinders. They got him at 39 on PrizePicks, so the under looking like the way to go potentially here against Houston. I do see Houston, Detroit playing out as more of a guard-heavy, guard-friendly game. I could see this being an up and down, back and forth, run and gun style game. Maybe that benefits Jeremy Grant. But I think it plays to the skill set of the guards more than anything. So DeLon Wright, Victor Oladipo, John Wall if he plays, maybe Kevin Porter Jr. So Jeremy Grant's looking like a potential under here. Now, I heard some folks in the Discord this morning talking Christian Wood. So we're going to talk about him and then wrap it up for this matchup here, this game. Christian Wood's projected at 37. Of course, there's the narrative of it being a revenge game, him taking on his former team, the Detroit Pistons. He's expected to play 30 minutes tonight. 30 minutes for Christian Wood. So let's look at his last game, and maybe it'll help us out here. So in his last game, he played 26 minutes. He went 8 for 12, so he shot the ball really well, 67% field goal percentage. Ended up with 34.8 fantasy points, which puts him under 37. Now, that was against Golden State. Pretty tough front court there. So if his minutes are truly going to be at 30 tonight, they're going to start ramping up his minutes, well then, yeah, I think taking the over on Christian Wood, especially with the revenge narrative in mind, could be a play, could be a way to go. He is a versatile big. Detroit allowing just 29.8 fantasy points per game to versatile bigs. When he's out on the floor, though, 1.34 fantasy points per minute and a usage rating of 25. But guys, got to keep in mind, the last time he was on the court, DeMarcus Cousins was on the team. John Wall and Victor Oladipo, I think, were both healthy. I mean, like I said, it's just an ever-changing modular situation here for the Houston Rockets. So just be careful and quell expectations until you start seeing all of these guys playing more minutes together, and then you can kind of get a better picture of what's happening. Anyway, we're going to move on to the next game. We've got the Brooklyn Nets taking on my Orlando Magic, and oh boy, guys like James Harden, Kyrie Irving have absolutely killed us this year. Those guys that are like combo guards, you know, who can kind of do a little bit of everything. We just can't guard guards at all. So I'm a little worried about this matchup for us. We're probably going to get blown out. Let's go find this game. Oh yeah, it's just as I thought. Brooklyn 117.25, Orlando 106.75. You got Brooklyn as an 10 or 11 point favorite. No surprise there. All right. On the Brooklyn side of things, I mentioned Orlando being terrible against guys like Kyrie and James Harden. Well, both guys do fit that combo guard classification. Both guys in very good spots. The only thing that's working against these dudes is the fact that they may not even have to play 4 quarters of basketball. They could blow us out and probably will. So I would be a little concerned with taking either guy in a full game format. Might want to stick to just playing these dudes in a first half only. But it's looking like a good spot here. Combo guards against Orlando, over 52 fantasy points per game allowed by the Orlando Magic. 2 combo guards. So both guys in really great spots. Now, of the 2 guards, Harden has the higher fantasy point per minute number, 1.4. Kyrie Irving at 1.27. Now, what's interesting is their usage ratings are exactly the same, 29.49. I don't know how that is possible, but it's possible. It's true. All right, let's look at James Harden real quick at his previous matchups against the Orlando Magic. I'm not even worried about his recent game logs. We know he's a baller. So the last time he faced Orlando, he dropped 38.3 fantasy points, which would put him well under tonight's projection of 56 right now. So I don't know. Do you believe in that? Let's see, though. We go back even further to January 16th versus Orlando. He puts up 73.6 or 73.4 points. So huge over in one game, huge under in the next game. Now let's look at Kyrie Irving and how he's performed against Orlando historically this season. You can see in the last game, which was on 2/25/21, February 25th, he puts up 51.5 fantasy points. So Harden had the bad game. Irving had the good game in that last matchup against Orlando. But we go back even further here. Now let's see if Kyrie played in this game. He did not. He missed that January 16th matchup. So I don't know, guys. Flip a coin. One of these guys are going to kill us. I just don't know which one. Based on game logs, it's hard to figure that one out. But either way, both guys in very good spots. Now, another guy that stands out here is Nikola Vucevic, who is obviously having an all-star season. He was named an all-star for the second time. He is our, backbone. He is the main guy here for the Orlando Magic. Now, he's projected at 48 today. He's at 48.07. Not much of an edge over or down, or over or under. So they got him at 48 on both sites. Pretty fair there. He will be facing DeAndre Jordan. Probably seeing a lot of DJ tonight. This Brooklyn Nets team has allowed just 36 fantasy points per game to versatile bigs. Let's look at the recent games against Brooklyn and just get an idea of how he's fared. All right, 41.4, pretty much held in check. And if this game blows out, then I do like taking a lot of unders in this one. So Vucevic went under there. We go back to January 16th. Against Brooklyn, he puts up 67.5. So wow, he had two good games. One, he did go under despite it being a pretty good game, and one, he went well over at 67.5. So, yeah, I don't know how this one shakes out, but according to Vegas, it's going to be a blowout. So just be careful taking anybody in full game formats here. Of course, Aaron Gordon, he's been rumored to be in trade discussions. Evan Fournier, Vucevic, all of these guys' names are being dangled out there for the Orlando Magic in terms of potential trade chips. So moving on to the next game, we've got the Golden State Warriors, who are going to be without both Steph Curry and James Wiseman. So it's going to be up to guys like Draymond Green, Andrew Wiggins, Jordan Poole and company to step their games up and try and hold down the fort until the Golden State Warriors can get healthy again. All right, so looking at some of these guys that stand out, you got Ja Morant over on the Memphis side, Jonas Valanciunas, Dylan Brooks. Ja Morant's a guy that stands out to me. He's projected at 38 fantasy points right now over on Roto Grinders. They got him at 37.67, so 37 to 38 points seems to be a pretty fair projection for him. If we look at the situation here, no Steph Curry, which means that maybe they get worse defensively. Curry's not known as a lockdown defender by any means, but this Golden State Warriors team is allowing over 49 fantasy points per game to combo guards like Ja Morant. So let's look at his game logs real quick and see what Ja's been up to. You can see here that in his last few games, it's been pretty bad. 41.2 does put him over, but then he goes under in 4 straight games here. 4 straight games where he's gone under, and gone under by quite a bit. I mean, he's not really coming close to 38 in most of these games. So it's been under on Ja Morant in recent games. All right. 31.1 minutes per game for the season, 1.13 fantasy points per minute, and his usage rating is over 30. So things looking good for Ja Morant. Maybe he bounces back in this matchup, but this game doesn't look like it's going to stay particularly close. I question if Golden State is going to remain competitive without, their main guy, Steph Curry, in the lineup. Another guy that could potentially go off tonight is Jordan Poole. Maybe PrizePicks has Jordan Poole a little too low with Steph Curry being out. He's at 26 on PrizePicks. He's at 29.84 on Roto Grinders. So this would lead me to believe that a major over is in play here. Combo guards against Memphis. Memphis allowing over 41.8 fantasy points per game to combo guards. So Jordan Poole could be in a good spot here. You can see in his last 5 games, he's worked his way back into playing shape here. He missed a lot of games to start the month of March and back into February, but he's been playing much better here. And you got to figure that his minutes will be up without Curry. He's been somewhere between 20 and 25 minutes in his last few games. He is expected to play 30 minutes tonight. So I do like the over on Jordan Poole. In fact, I'm going to just go ahead and say it that he might be my favorite play, early play right now to lock in. I could see this guy having a potentially very good game and going well over 26 fantasy points. So liking that one quite a bit. Otherwise, the main guys here for Golden State, Draymond Green, Andrew Wiggins, both of them in what I would call spots where it might be a little bit of a negative, we'll say, negative DVA spot. So the matchup's not looking particularly good for either guy on paper. The Memphis Grizzlies do a pretty good job against versatile bigs and scoring wings. Both Andrew Wiggins and Draymond Green are projected for 37, which would be an over for Draymond at 40, and it would be, I'm sorry, let's rewind. 40 for Draymond on PrizePicks, 37 over on RotoGrinders would be an under for Draymond and an over for Andrew Wiggins based on what we're seeing here if we compare site to site. So Jonas Valanciunas could be a guy who's in a good spot. He's at 40 on PrizePicks, but just 34.86. So if this game blows out, then yeah, I don't think Joe Val gets to 40. But yeah, I'm kind of surprised that RotoGrinders is so low. But you got to look at this matchup here. 25.68 fantasy points per game allowed to post up big. So this is a negative spot for Joe Val, but James Wiseman won't be in there. So who are they going to throw at Jonas Valanciunas that could potentially slow him down? I really don't know. I don't think Draymond's going to be guarding him. I'm not really worried about anybody else in this matchup. I think Valanciunas is in a better spot than RotoGrinders projections would indicate. So that's going to be it for that one. Let's keep moving here. Man, we still got a few more guys to talk about here. A few more teams too. Zach LaVine was somebody who came up in today's Discord chat when people start looking at these early locks, these potentially good plays. Chicago Bulls, they got LaVine, Markkanen, Thaddeus Young tonight against the Denver Nuggets, Jokic, Murray, and Michael Porter Jr. So let's take a look and see who stands out. Well, we got Jamal Murray at 35. He's at 35 on PrizePicks as well. So 35 looking like the right number for Jamal Murray. Combo guards against the Chicago Bulls have done well this season. Chicago allowing over 44 fantasy points per game to combo guards. So Jamal Murray's in a great spot, guys. He may not be Bubble Murray at the moment, but he does have the potential to be Bubble Murray at any given moment. So in his last few games here, you can see if we go back to game 5 in his game log against Indiana, 34.4 puts him slightly under tonight's projection of 35. Then he goes way under at just 19 against Memphis, way under against Dallas here with 20.9. Then 32.2 puts him under against Indiana. And then finally against Charlotte, he bounces back and has 40.9, puts him over. So 1 over, 4 unders in his recent games. Now, he does have a game log against Chicago. That was back on March 1st. He puts up just 29.9 fantasy points. So I don't know if that game blew out or whatever, or maybe he just didn't play well, but looks like he did get 35 minutes of run there. So Jamal Murray, on paper, this looks like a very good spot for him and a potential over situation. Let's see who else we have. Well, putting all the numbers aside for just a minute, Nikola Jokic, 55.14 on RotoGrinders, 55 over on PrizePicks. Jokic makes for a good play here against this Chicago Bulls team. I just don't think they have anybody who is good enough to really stop or slow Nikola Jokic. So if I were to lean either way on Jokic, it would probably be towards the over, as this game doesn't look like a complete massacre. It looks like Chicago might have enough firepower to hang around with Denver for the most part, but I would take the over on Jokic. Let's take a look and see how Jokic performed in his last meeting against Chicago. Yeah, he puts up 77.3 fantasy points. Now, I don't think he's going to go out there and put up 77 again, but I do think that he does have a very good game, and 55, going over 55 just makes a lot of sense here. Like I said, not factoring any numbers or anything, just thinking about, all right, who does Chicago have that can slow down Nikola Jokic? Nobody. All right. So other than that, Lauri Markkanen, he is at 27.53. He's at 28 over on PrizePicks. They like the under. That could be a potential play there for Markkanen. Zach LaVine, he's at 39.44 on RotoGrinders, 38 on PrizePicks. So RotoGrinders liking the over on Zach LaVine. And I agree, 38 seems too low for Zach LaVine. I think this is a situation where he could potentially go over. But let's look at how he performed in his last game against Denver, which was recent. He puts up 43.3. All right, so there you go. I think that could make some sense here, taking the over on LaVine. And you can see it in the last two games, 49.2 and 48.6. So, yeah, I think LaVine is under projected at just 38, but, you know, that's just me. But enough of that one. We're going to move on to the next game here. We are rounding the corner. We are heading toward the home stretch. Thanks for hanging in there with me. We've got the Dallas Mavericks taking on the Portland Trail Blazers, and then we've got the Minnesota Timberwolves taking on the Phoenix Suns. So first things first, let's talk Dallas and Portland. We've got Luka Doncic Kristaps Porzingis taking on the likes of Damian Lillard, Enes Kanter. Now, this game has a ton of points here on the board. 229, 230 combined points, I would say. Somewhere around that range. Anyway, tons of points. Spread, super competitive here. So it's going to be high scoring and it's going to stay close. So we love that for fantasy purposes. First guy that steps out and is catching my eye here is Luka Doncic. Now, Doncic is at 59 over on PrizePicks, but just 52.74 on RotoGrinders. That's why it's catching my eye. And for other reasons. The fact that Portland allows 46.8 fantasy points per game to combo guards is kind of eye-opening as well. But yeah, I don't know why there's such a big difference here from site to site, PrizePicks versus RotoGrinders. But let's see how Doncic has done here at 59 fantasy points. All right, so you can see in his last few games, going back here to Orlando, March 1st, he puts up 54.5, puts him under. He misses the next game. This game here was against Team Durant in the All-Star game. Comes back after All-Star break, puts up 48.4 points. That puts him under. Then he misses the next game against OKC, comes back, just puts up 42. Then he's got 2 overs against the Clippers, 60 and 73.7. So I guess maybe they're looking at the last 2 games and how he's been performing, and that's why they have him projected up at 59, taking into consideration maybe the game totals and the spread for this one. And they think that this is another spot where Luka Doncic goes for about 60 points tonight. But I don't know, man. It's been hard for us to figure Luka out. His game logs are just all over the place. One of the probably the best players who has the most volatile looking game logs that I've seen. So this might be a guy that I just fade in this spot. I'm just not feeling it. Let's see who else stands out. Damian Lillard, he is at 47.1 on RotoGrinders, 50 on PrizePicks. So you're looking at a difference of about 3 points. That's still a pretty reasonably big gap. These sites tend to differ on how these guys are going to be performing tonight. PrizePicks seems to be pretty high on a lot of these dudes, where RotoGrinders is like, hey, not so fast. We're going to project them a little bit lower than you. So they like the under on Damian Lillard. This is a good spot, though, against Dallas, as Dallas allows over 41, almost 42 fantasy points per game to combo guards like Dame Time. But you got to remember, CJ McCollum is back for the Portland Trail Blazers, so it's to be expected that he'll eat away at some of Damian Lillard's production here. But I do like the under, I think, on Dame Time. Let's look at his recent game logs real quick and see what he's been doing. So he went under against New Orleans, over against New Orleans, over here against Minnesota, under against Minnesota, and then an over against Phoenix. So he's got 3 overs, 2 unders in his last 5 game logs. But moving on here, let's see who else we have up on the board. Kristaps Porzingis, he's at 41 on RotoGrinders, 40 over on PrizePicks. So PrizePicks, very high on Doncic, very high on Lillard, not super high here on Porzingis. Maybe Porzingis is the way we go to take an over on anybody from this game. Enes Kanter, the other guy up for Portland, he's at 33. Kanter over on RotoGrinders, not in a great or a plus matchup, I would say here. They got him at just 29.73, so RotoGrinders liking the under, as Dallas is the toughest team against post-up bigs, allowing under 21 fantasy points per game. So taking the under on Enes Kanter, maybe that makes some sense. All right, that's going to do it for that game. We have finally reached the last game of the evening. And that is the Minnesota Timberwolves taking on the Phoenix Suns. Let's buzz through this game real quick. It tips off at 10 p.m. It is the late game tonight, that along with this Portland-Dallas game. So standing out for me, I'm not seeing too many hot DVA spots or great DVA spots. Karl Anthony Towns, he's at 45.32. They like the under on RotoGrinders. He's at 48 on PrizePicks. And listen, taking Karl Anthony Towns under lately has worked out more often than not. Last night, he did have a monster game, puts up 64 fantasy points against Phoenix. So this is a rematch between Cat and Devin Booker, 2 very close friends in real life. And I think last night I mentioned it in the Discord that I think these guys are going to go at each other. I think they're going to try and out-duel one another. And that's what it ended up turning into. Karl Anthony Towns, he puts up 41 points last night. Devin Booker, he ended up putting up a pretty big game himself, ended up with 35 real life points and 46.8 fantasy points. So I think these guys could potentially go at it again in this rematch and look to take each other's heads off. They might be friends off the court, but when they're on the court, they're enemies and they're going at each other, trying to outdo one another. So that'll be a fun little game within the game to kind of watch Book go against Cat. So otherwise, Anthony Edwards was the guy last night who had a huge game. A lot of people were taking the over on Anthony Edwards. Now, the matchup would say Anthony Edwards shouldn't have had as good of a game as he did. Scoring wings have been held in check by Phoenix. They allowed just 18 fantasy points per game, but there was no stopping Anthony Edwards last night. And recently, it's been hard to stop Anthony Edwards in general. Last night, he puts up 58.9 fantasy points, but in his last 5, you could see he's been smashing 37 pretty regularly here. 40.8, 35.1, 42.8, 36.3, and 58.9. So ever since the likes of D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley have went out, Anthony Edwards has stepped into a much larger role and is flourishing. He's looking like a strong Rookie of the Year candidate. So going over on Anthony Edwards could be the way to go here at 37. But as I mentioned, he is under on Roto Grinders, and this should be a tough matchup. Let's see if they could slow him down tonight. That's going to do it for today's video. Man, it was a long one. There's a ton of games tonight, a ton of different ways you can go. Hopefully this video has brought you value. If it has, please hit the like button. It helps me out, lets me know that you guys like the content I'm making and to make more of it for you guys. So good luck tonight if you're playing NBA. Good luck tonight if you're playing college basketball. Tons of college basketball games to be played as well over on PrizePicks. So appreciate you guys tuning in. This is CJ. Good luck tonight, and until the next one, guys, peace out. Let's go get some more money. See ya.